Hello and welcome to another edition of What I Wish I Knew Before I Taught a Particular Book. The book that we're dealing with today is not one of the classics. This is one of those books that I recommend for you to be oriented and for your students to be oriented to better understand a person or a moment in history. And that book is Thomas Aquinas, The Dumb Ox by G.K. Chesterton. And if you're asking yourself, why should we read this book? Number one, it's G.K. Chesterton. Any excuse you find to be able to read another Chesterton book is a good excuse. And beyond that, this is considered by many to be the most insightful biography of Thomas Aquinas. It's not meticulously written. It's not concerned with the details of his life. Chesterton is highly intuitive, and his whole thing is kind of taking everything in at a glance. But he takes in Aquinas at a glance and then paints this picture that is very vivid and very helpful. And by the way, I think this picture that he paints has kind of become the popular understanding of Thomas Aquinas. I don't think Chesterton gets him exactly right, but lots of people walk around thinking this is what Aquinas thought because they read The Dumb Ox by G.K. Chesterton. So that's why I think you should read this book, and more importantly, we need to talk about what I wish I knew before I taught this particular book. And this one's pretty straightforward. There's a couple things that you need to keep in view. Number one, and this is the good news, because Chesterton, like most people, associates Augustine with Plato and Aquinas with Aristotle, then Chesterton also is careful to talk about the shortcomings of Plato and their effect on Augustine. And that's a great thing for your student to read. If you've listened to any of the other videos on this page, you've probably heard me talking about how dangerous Gnosticism is for the church. It's very tempting as a Christian to begin to think that the spiritual is always good and the physical is always bad. And that is a Gnostic view of reality. It is heretical, frankly, and Christians need to do their best to shake off that mindset any chance we get. God made this world. He declared it very good, and he gave us good physical gifts. We should delight in the good gift of sleep. We should delight in the good gift of pepperoni pizza. All of these things are good gifts from God. Plato wants to live up in the level of the rational, and because he does, Plato then elevates the spiritual and denigrates the physical. He treats the physical world as pretty much an illusion set on deceiving you. To Augustine's credit, Augustine in the City of God very carefully debunks Gnosticism. He knows deep down that Gnosticism is not biblical, and he very carefully takes that stance. Unfortunately, there are things in his life that still suggest he fell back into that Gnostic trap occasionally. In any case, Chesterton does a great job here of critiquing the Gnostic position. It's a warning that we should hold on to as the church all the time. So that's a benefit and a strength of this book. The problem with this book is that Chesterton believes firmly in human reason, and I think misrepresents Aquinas to elevate human reason to a position that Aquinas didn't even hold to himself. So these are a couple quotes from Chesterton that you need to be aware of going into this. This is the most powerful statement here. He says, "It was the very life of the Thomist teaching," meaning the teaching of Aquinas. "It was the very life of the Thomist teaching that reason can be trusted. It was the very life of the Lutheran teaching that reason is utterly untrustworthy." So he's drawing this hard contrast, and saying pretty firmly that Aquinas falls on the side of reason. He paints Aquinas as the sort of person who believes that you can, if you're smart enough and a good enough philosopher, that you can reason your way to all the truths of Scripture. Elsewhere, Chesterton says, and this is amazing. Okay, so he's referring here to Darwin's bulldog, T.H. Huxley, and Huxley is an atheist who hid under the title of agnostic. And this is what Chesterton says. Aquinas adopts almost literally the Huxleyan definition of the agnostic method to follow reason as far as it will go. And if you've wrestled with this at all as a teacher, you're aware then of the problem with this position. When you elevate reason to a place where it's equal to revelation, or perhaps even surpasses revelation, you are depending on fallen human beings to use the tool of reason well. And that is the point that Luther would make. It's the point that Calvin would make. It's the idea behind total depravity, right? Total depravity doesn't mean that people always do the wrong thing all the time. It means that we are fallen totally, mind, body, and will, right? And there's this tendency to think, oh no, if you get a good education, sure, your body is fallen, and sure, your will is fallen. But if you get a good education and learn how to use the tools of logic well, then you'll be able to just figure things out for yourself. And the Bible clearly refutes this position. The Bible clearly teaches this idea that the intellect is marred by the fall as well. I only have time for one passage. I'll give you some other scripture references you can use. Write down Romans 1, 18 through 23, Proverbs 14, 12, 2 Corinthians 3, 13 through 16, and then here I'll be reading from Ephesians 4, 17 through 18. Here Paul says this, "So I tell you this, and insist on it in the Lord, that you must no longer live as the Gentiles do in the futility of their thinking. They are darkened in their understanding and separated from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them due to the hardening of their hearts." And you might hear that passage and think, well, that's not me. I'm not one of the hardened heart crew. I'm actually, in fact, a Christian who have had my eyes popped open by the gospel. Fair enough, but we were all in that position once. We were all in that position of thinking our intellect was dependable in the hardness of our hearts before the gospel broke through. That's the point of Ephesians 4. That's the point of the other scripture references that I gave you. It's true that man is fallen totally in body, in will, and in intellect. And I think Aquinas understood that better than Chesterton paints him to. But nonetheless, this is the popular understanding of Aquinas. We get it from a great writer in G.K. Chesterton, and I think it misrepresents him. It certainly misrepresents Christian epistemology, and you need to be on your toes when you're teaching the dumb ox by Chesterton.